to Elmhurst, our community. I'm Ken Bartels, your host, and we're here at the Community Bank of Elmhurst in the Business Zone. And today we're actually talking about the Community Bank of Elmhurst concluding its 30th year in business in Elmhurst. To have that conversation, I have Rich Reichert, the president and CEO and also a director of CBE. And Rich, welcome to our program.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be here on the second floor of the building that I've worked at for nearly 30 years.
Exactly right. So, in 1993, George Hammersmith Sr. and Bill Gooch combined to open and create the Community Bank of Elmhurst. Now, I know you were a part of that from the very beginning. Can you talk about why that was important and how it exactly happened?
Well, Bill Gooch had worked at York State Bank in Elmhurst for more than a quarter of a century, and he had been president for about 19 years there. And the ownership of the bank decided they were going to sell to a larger bank group. And in the beginning, he thought that might work out really well for him. It didn't, and it wasn't the kind of banking atmosphere that he was used to. He wasn't able to service customers on a personal basis the way he had always led his bank to do. George Hammersmith Sr. happened to be on the board at that bank, and he saw the same thing. And so when Mr. Gooch decided to leave York State Bank, which was now a part of a larger bank group, Mr. Hammersmith talked to Mr. Gooch and said, you know what, I think the two of us can team up and we can start our own bank, and it will operate the way a good community bank should operate. It will be all about the community. We'll do things that are right for the customer and not just right for the bottom line of the bank. So sometime in 1992, they decided to actually commence that project. Mr. Hammersmith was, I hate to use the term, but the money person behind the bank. He was the one that provided most of the financing. There were also folks in the community that put up financing, and it took them about a year, a little more than a year, to actually open the doors of the bank. Now, when you start a bank, it's no easy task. There are a lot of folks involved behind the scenes, including you need to have an initial board of directors. So they knew right from day one that they needed to get local directors that knew our community, knew the needs of the community, and could help them grow the bank in the beginning. And then they also needed to have quite a few employees on day one so that they were ready to go and service the customer. So I was one of the fortunate few that was able to help that effort and help them get ready to open. I didn't officially become an employee until about 10 months after I started helping them, but it was a huge undertaking, and those two people really had a vision that lasts to today.
It actually started at this location in a trailer, and I've heard some trailer stories over the years, but what was that like?
Well, like any organization, you have some rules about nomenclature, or how you refer to things, and our rule was we never called it a trailer. Now, you've known me for many years, and you've heard me call it a trailer many times. Once it's in the rearview mirror, that's fine. But we referred to it as our temporary building. It was a modular building. It was basically two double-wide trailers put together. We started business with 10 employees in that little trailer. We got to know each other very, very well. One of my coworkers from day one, Ruth Osmussen, her desk and mine were at right angles to each other and butted up against each other. We knew each other so well at the end of that, all of us, the 10 of us in this small trailer. And in the beginning, it was kind of a joke for people to come in and say, I'm opening my account at the trailer bank, and we'd always say, no, it's a modular building. And it was difficult to get some people to put their money in a trailer, frankly. But the folks that knew us and trusted us, that we had known for many, many years, they were willing to take that chance and start a relationship with Community Bank of Elmhurst. The one thing we had going for us is, as you mentioned, we've always been at this location, 330 West Butterfield, and where we sit right now. So we were able to point out the back window and say, that's where our building will be someday. And we had plans to start construction right away. They got delayed a little bit, but it's not like it was 5 years off. It was, we were ready to start construction as soon as we could.
So, as a follow-up to that, when did this building actually open?
This building actually opened in September of '94. We opened our doors in the trailer on May 24th of 1993. So it was nearly a year and a half. And we remember, we'd be in the trailer watching the construction, and we'd occasionally tour the construction site in the evening when the construction workers weren't there. We didn't want to be in their way. But the thing I remember the most about the beginning of the construction were the pilings. There are over 100 big wood piles that were driven into the ground. Some of them were, 50 feet long, and a big pile driver was here. So we're in a trailer, and as they're driving the piles, the whole trailer is shaking. So I remember that fondly, and I also remember the first thing to go in on the foundation, once that was poured, was the vault. And I have pictures of the vault all by itself before the bank was built around it. It's really difficult to build a building and then build the vault after you've built the building.
That's just amazing. I was trying to remember what was here before CBE was here.
Well, there's an Elmhurst history book that Dave Oberg at the Elmhurst History Museum could put his fingers on, as can I. I have one in my office that has a picture of this property from a flood in the 1970s, long before the flood mitigation had taken place in the late 80s. And this particular property where the bank is right now was a parking lot, mostly gravel, for a miniature golf course, which was just to our west, on the same side of the creek as the bank. And within a quarter mile of this location, you had a miniature golf course, a roller rink, a bowling alley, a water slide, at one time an outdoor movie theater, a drive-in. We always said there was nothing to do in Elmhurst growing up. There was a lot to do in Elmhurst, and there still is. It was just a kid's perspective.
Now, George and Bill created a strong mission statement for the bank that still drives the way CBE operates. Do you remember how that came about?
Absolutely. That was our board of directors getting together and creating that mission statement and saying it's important that the mission statement is accurate and is not just fluff. What's most important and what's valued the most in writing our mission statement to this day, and it's been changed slightly about 25 years ago, but it values our customers and our community first. And a lot of folks talk about valuing their community as an organization or as a financial institution, but we live it every day, and hopefully later on I'll give you a few examples of how we do that.
I think the other, not the other, but one of the other, it's been a local board since the very beginning. And the size of the board has fluctuated, but it's always been a local board, which I don't believe another bank in Elmhurst can say.
Certainly not anymore. There was a time when every community had a small bank in its community or several small banks with local boards. The laws in Illinois that really constrained branch banking were a lot tougher than they were in a lot of other states. So the state of Illinois was one of the last true branch banking states where you could pretty much put branches anywhere you want. They used to have to be within a half mile of the main bank or something like that. So that really made it tough for a big bank to come in and buy a small bank. But it's been many, many years since we've had a competitor with a local board, and we are the only locally owned bank that's based in Elmhurst to this day.
So you mentioned some reticence from customers when you were in the trailer. What other challenges do you recall from that first year or even the first few years?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we were in very tight quarters, so space was definitely valuable to us because we didn't have any space. We had all of our records back then, if you recall. We didn't have the computer storage that our society is used to now. Most of our records were on green bar paper that went through the old big dot matrix printers, and every day we would get a pile of paper that would fill a banker's box, all for records on customers, whether it be their loans or deposits, our bank financial statements. So we were really at a shortage for storage. We also had machinery to operate. We had to run checks through what were called proof machines, which are a thing of the past. But we had to have 2 machines, one as a backup, in a very tight space. We actually had them in our kitchen. So our kitchen doubled as our bookkeeping department and our proof department, and our bathrooms were right off the kitchen. So everybody knew when you went to the bathroom. And we had so few employees, we all had to wear a bunch of hats. We had to be jacks of all trades. We were not people that were used to working as specialists. We knew banking inside and out. We had to, otherwise we couldn't have operated. And with that small a staff, there were a lot of long, hard hours worked and not a lot of other folks to rely on and very little vacation that first year.
So talking specifically about you for a moment, can you track your Community Bank of Elmhurst career from, what did you start out officially being versus being what you are today?
Well, my first title was controller and auditor. Now, most people would agree that those two don't go together. You're auditing yourself, but it was a title. So I basically was the one who had the financial expertise. I was also the only one who would actually run checks through a proof machine before. So I had to teach everybody else how to do that. And, I said we were jacks of all trades, but not all trades. Everybody had their own few trades that they had partaken in the banking industry. So I was responsible to make sure everything balanced, whether it was the loans, the deposits, did most of the file maintenance and had somebody else check it that really wasn't that well versed in it. But, I worked pretty hard in the beginning and didn't do much lending at all, which, I'm now been the president of the bank for over 20 years and the CEO for over 15 years. That doesn't happen very often for somebody who didn't come up on the sales lending side. But eventually, in those first few years, they needed a little help on the lending side too. So I had to learn that the hard way.
Senior Vice President Nancy Brooke was also in the trailer, and you and Nancy both celebrated 30-year employment anniversaries this year as well. How did Nancy come to CBE?
Well, Nancy had worked with us at York State Bank, and I had only been there a couple years when I came here, but some of those folks had been there for many years with Bill Gooch and George Hammersmith Sr. for that matter. And Nancy was one of them, and everybody knew Nancy is a special person. Anybody who knows Nancy Brooke knows she's a special person.
Absolutely.
She can't stand the limelight. She would be sitting in another chair with you today if she liked the limelight. and not that I love it, but I'm willing to tackle it. She knows more people in this town than I think anybody else does. And she's probably cared for family members of more people in this town. She does so many nice things for so many people. She is just beloved. And, you know, Bill Gooch and George Hammersmith Sr. started the bank, but Nancy Brooke is the soul of the bank. She really is. And I consider her my big sister. Yes, she's older than me. I just let out a big secret. Not a lot older than me, but she and I are the only two left as employees from the very beginning of the bank. Now, our current chair, George Hammersmith Sr., was on the board when the bank started, but he moved away and was off the bank for a number of years.
So one last question before we take a break. Would it be possible for Bill and George to create the Community Bank of Elmhurst today?
That's a really tough question. And the answer is it would be very difficult. And the biggest difference is purely money. When this bank was started, it was started with $5 million in capital, a little more than that, but not much more than that. And I remember even 15 years ago hearing you needed a minimum of $25 million to start a bank or the regulators wouldn't approve it. Now, part of that was when we went through 2008 and the economic downturn, they wanted to make sure that a bank that was starting then, and very few, if any, started at that point in time, had enough capital to weather the storm, so to speak. And now I would guess that figure might be closer to 40 or 50 million. And if you compare that to inflation, that figure's far outstripped inflation. So it would be tough.
On that note, we're going to go to break. We're at the Community Bank of Elmhurst, and we're talking about its 30th anniversary, which is closing in just a few weeks. We'll be right back. The Community Bank of Elmhurst Business Zone has modern co-working space and a conference room free for customers. Visit the zone today at communityelmhurst.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Welcome back to Elmhurst, our community. We're talking with Rich Reichert, President and CEO and Director of the Community Bank of Elmhurst, about its 30 years in business in Elmhurst, Illinois. And Rich, I wanted to ask the current number of employees, the current status in 2023.
Well, our asset size, which is how most banks measure themselves, and if you run into another banker, they'll say, you know, what's your footings? What's your asset size? We're still a very small bank. We're 190 million in assets. When we left the trailer to come to this building, we were about 30 or 35 million in assets, to give you an idea. We have just over 30 employees, and we've been at that level, a little lower, a little higher, for most of the last 20 years. What we've had to do through technology is outsource certain things that just can't be done by hand anymore, or not even outsource. We do a lot of the work internally still. Like, for instance, we used to have to run checks through a proof machine, as I mentioned earlier, which was a very labor-intensive job. Now we take all the items that come over the teller counter and we run them through a sorter, and they're automatically posted to accounts through that, beginning with that process, and it's not as labor-intensive. That said, the technology support required for that is more. So when we started the bank, I was the IT guy, they used to call me. They wouldn't call me the IT director, I was the IT guy. And then 17, 18 years ago, we decided we needed a full-time information technology director who's now Abel Rubio, and he has been since the beginning. And now he has another person who helps him and an outside firm that helps him too. So the requirements for your computer, your information technology infrastructure in terms of personnel is a lot higher than it was before, and yet your requirements for internal processing of items is lesser.
We talked earlier about this building. This building, for me, actually embodies the mission statement. The room we're in, the George Hammersmith Senior Community Room, was designed as a part of this bank to be an asset for the community. And the whole philosophy of CBE, as I understand it, and I've been a director since 1998, is to constantly look for ways that sometimes might not even make complete financial sense to be invested in the community. And right where we are is an example of that.
Yeah, we have this second floor here at our Butterfield Road location, mostly dedicated to this community room that we sit in right now. It's a large space, and this space does not directly generate any dollars for the bank. What it does do is feed into that mission statement that you mentioned. It's a way to give back to the community. This room is available to nonprofit organizations that are based in our community for no fee. And let me tell you, it takes some employee time to manage it, to book it, and then of course resources to clean it.
Well, and it's open, and it's potentially open when the bank isn't.
Right, and it's heated, it's cooled. That's the kind of thing that we do here at Community Bank that you won't see other institutions doing. And again, it doesn't add directly to the bottom line. Our bottom line's a little different though. Our bottom line is both financial and the satisfaction of knowing that we've really helped our community. We've got a couple of other things on site like that. In 2018, we took an area that was a retention detention pond, I don't know the difference, that's behind our property, and it's a good size area, and we dedicated that in honor of one of our former directors who had passed, Daryl Whistler, who was the epitome of a community volunteer and a person who really cared about this community. So we spent a whole bunch of money and upgraded that, and we have a beautiful prairie garden right behind our building at 330 West Butterfield. The next year, we found that Elmhurst Hospital, when it was torn down, used to have a beautiful ornament, I would call it, on top, called the cupola. And it had been there for many years atop Elmhurst Hospital. It was a little bit of a landmark. In fact, if you were on 290 or 294 crossing the tracks on the east side of Elmhurst, you could actually see the cupola from up there before the walls were built that are there now. So it was kind of a landmark around the city, and the city of Elmhurst actually took it and kept it in storage because there were a lot of folks that felt, hey, maybe it should go at the new hospital location or the old hospital location, and they just couldn't work it out to get that accomplished. So we knew it had been sitting in storage for a long time, went over and took a look at it. It was in a horrible state of disrepair, but the city agreed to sell it to us for $1 and help move it here. We spent a whole bunch of money to prepare a site for that and restore that. And now that cupola sits right on the edge of the Whistler Garden. Again, that did not contribute to the bottom line. Cost us a lot of time and money, but let me tell you, that was one of the best investments we ever made to save a gem in a community. And if you've seen pictures online and never seen it in person, you may not believe this, but the top of that cupola is 19 feet tall, and the flag atop it takes it up to 32 feet. It's a big structure.
And can be visibly seen lit at night, well, in daytime too, but lit at night from Butterfield Road going east.
Right. And we have holiday lights on it, so different colors and different times of the year.
So over the years, some other examples of specific community events or activities that CBE has fostered?
There are quite a few that come to mind. We were part of Elmfest from the time we opened the bank, and that was a lot of fun to have a booth at Elmfest every year. It's bittersweet when I think about Elmfest. It was a lot of work, but it was also a lot of fun. So I miss that. We were the initial sponsor of the Elmhurst Running Club's 4 on the 4th. It's a 4 mile, I believe, and a 4 mile run on the 4th of July every year. We don't sponsor that anymore, but we helped them kick that off, and we're the primary and lead sponsor of that for quite a few years. One of my fondest memories, and kind of worked personally with you on it, was John Quigley at the Chamber of Commerce had floated an idea in maybe 2004, 2005, 2006 range about bringing fireworks back to Elmhurst. We hadn't had fireworks in Elmhurst for many years, and he went one further. He found a company that did low altitude fireworks. They would do them right in the downtown area. And you and I talked a little bit about it, and John and I talked, and I thought it was a great idea. I love fireworks. Most people do. Dog owners don't always love fireworks, but most folks do. And so we worked with the city and the Chamber of Commerce, and I personally put a lot of time into the effort to convince the folks at the city council that this was a good idea. So we helped bring fireworks to Elmfest during Elmfest 2 years in a row, and
Top of the Schiller deck.
yeah, and that was a lot of fun. And my gosh, the people that stayed around on those nights to watch those fireworks are pretty exciting. Another event that we've sponsored and hosted now, this will be the 25th time we've hosted the Elmhurst Mayor's State of Our City address in our Hammersmith Community Room, right where we sit right now. And it's usually in January, sometimes it's been a little later of each year. We've had multiple mayors deliver that address, 4 as I recall, beginning with Mayor Marcucci. And on this particular address, which will be in January of this year, will, as I said, be the 25th here. It will be the 27th overall. One year it was held at Elmhurst Restaurant, the first year up on Lake Street, and the second year, Immaculate Conception Church held that State of Our City. Ever since then, it's been here. We're really proud of that event. We've had over 200 people for that event. Typical attendance is 150. But it's really fun. We provide breakfast, and it's kind of a who's who of people who really make a difference and volunteer in Elmhurst.
So currently, there's a effort within CBE called For You. It's a pretty subtle effort, but at the same time it has powerful attachment to the mission statement. And I know I keep bringing the mission statement back, but I also know how much this place lives its mission statement. So the For You program, on every employee desk there's a plaque of sorts that says For You, and I know customers ask about it. So what is it?
Well, one of our directors brought me a book a few years ago that was called Know What You're For. And I don't remember the author. I should, but I don't. And it was a different way of looking at what makes an organization successful. And the author's hypothesis was, if you know what you stand for and you stand for something good, it will make your organization more successful. And it's important that everybody that's part of your organization knows what you stand for. Well, our mission statement is easy to decipher, if you look at it, what we stand for. As I said earlier, our customers and our community. Well, when we went through the process, we realized we stood for one other group. That's not good English. We stood for one other group, and that was our employee family. So the 4U program was instituted so that we're always thinking about what we can do better for our customers, for our community, and for each other. We actually have a time each week at each of our branches, which I'd like to talk a little bit about our other branch a little later. But every week for a half hour before we open, one of our employees gets to take charge of the music, and we play their favorite music really loud, and we all take time to reach out to people in our community, amongst our customer base, or to other employees that might be down. So we really make a concerted effort each week to do that, and we actually have a committee of employees that we've empowered to carry that effort even further, look for opportunities in the community to help, and communicate that with the other employees.
Yeah, I want to, and the 4U also takes place at the 133 North York, the City Center branch of CBE. When did that take place?
That branch?
Yes.
Well, so we opened, as I mentioned, in the trailer in 1993, moved into our permanent building where we sit now in 1994. And in the 1996, 1997 time frame, the board decided that it wanted to open another location in the downtown area. So we started scouting the downtown, and it took us about a year to find the right location. There was a delicatessen on Schiller between Palmer Drive and York on the south side of the street, Elliott's Deli.
Yep.
It was about 1,000 square feet, very, very small. We were able to secure a lease on that location and build out a small branch. We had 5 employees, 4 or 5, depending on the day down there. We had 3 teller windows and 2 personal banking desks and a small conference room and an ATM. And we operated there until 2002 when we got an opportunity to expand west to the corner where there used to be a jewelry exchange, which decided to move to Villa Park. And so we were able to sublease that space, and now we're the lessee of that space. And we have a full 3,000 square feet since 2002. That location's a lot of fun because a lot of people walk by there. It's very visible. And as a matter of fact, we happen to be recording this during the holiday season. In the last few years, we've done kind of what I refer to as a mini Marshall Fields / Macy's window display, where we have animated holiday displays in the windows along the sidewalks, and the kids just love that.
I was going to say, too, that another event, since we are in the holiday season as we're talking, the Chamber's monthly business after hours takes place here in December and is just a blowout evening. And last year, the bank instituted a charitable gift program. We're going to do it again actually next week. But it's just another example. As you've said, we're not a huge bank. So our financial contributions are going to have to reflect that. But at the same time, when we can make an impact financially, we take those opportunities.
Yes, last year we introduced this idea of everybody who comes to the December after hours that the Chamber of Commerce puts on here at Community Bank gets a chance to vote for one of about 30 local charities to get a donation from the bank. And only one charity gets that donation. So everybody that comes looks at our list of 30 local charities, they're all numbered, and they put the number of that charity on a ping pong ball. That ping pong ball goes into a big drum and it essentially gets drawn at the end of the night. It's a little more complicated, a little more fun than that. We have like the equivalent of a lottery machine to draw that last ball. But since everybody who attends gets to vote, some people have a better chance going in. It's kind of like the NBA draft. The teams at the bottom of the league have more chances than the teams at the top of the league. So the more people that vote for a particular charity, the better that charity's chance of winning. And the grand prize is a $5,000 donation, which will be given that night and identified that night. And that's very rewarding. Last year, Warm Coats for Cool Kids, their ping pong ball was drawn, and it's a great local charity.
Yeah. I want to circle back as we near the end of our time together, but I want to circle back to the question about could CBE be created today under the circumstances. A broader perspective, community banks in the United States, strong group of banks. What's the future look like for community banking from your viewpoint?
It's a little bit tough for community banks. I think you will find out in rural areas quite a few more community banks than you will in a metropolitan area. There are very few independent community banks left. There are folks that will tell you they're a community bank. They may have community bank in their name or their tagline. They're not. There are community banks in our area that are not really community banks. They claim to be community banks, and they're 150 times our size. They really can't be a community bank if they're that large. They don't know the community the way we do. And we actually keep a list of about 70 local organizations in our area, very local organizations. And we pretty much touch each of those organizations through our employees or our directors in one way or another. And many times are very active on the boards of those organizations.
So last question, does it seem like 30 years?
No, because I'm only 25 years old. It can't have been 30 years. And one other thing I want to mention about tenure. You mentioned Nancy, Brooke, and she and I are the two original employees left after 30 years, getting ready to start our 31st in this coming May. There were a few others like Bill Gooch and Ruth Osmussen. Before they retired, they made it to 25 years, but not quite 30. Our average employee right now, and I mentioned we have over 30 employees, has over 18 years of service at the bank. We have a handful of folks that are now over 25, other than Nancy and myself. And that just, every time I think about that, I almost can't believe it. It happened so quickly. Some of the folks we work with came right out of college when they started with us, and now they have families and kids away at college, and it's so rewarding. All the people I've worked with, all the directors I've worked with, I think there are 5 or 6 directors that had been with the bank at one time that have passed and are now deceased. All good folk. And we have a couple of our original employees who've passed away in the last several years. We were just thinking of one of them yesterday and some of the funny stuff that he used to say and the way he'd make us laugh. And I'll never forget those days.
Well, congratulations to you and to the Community Bank of Elmhurst on 30 years and all the impacts that this bank has provided for Elmhurst and its customers and its broader community. It's a testament to what small business can still mean to a community.
Well, thank you, Ken, and in particular, thanks to our employees, our directors, and our community, and our customers, obviously. But our community is outstanding. I love this place. On that, we're going to close. This has been Elmhurst, Our Community.
We've talked about 30 years of CBE and what it's done. Happy holidays to all of you, and for Rich Reichert, I'm Ken Bartels, and we'll see you again. The Community Bank of Elmhurst Business Zone has modern co-working space and a conference room free for customers. Visit the zone today at communityelmhurst.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.